G'day folks, how you going? Welcome back to this channel, and if you're the first time here, then a special good day to you. In our recent road trip series where we did the Wheatbelt Way, we visited the Nungarin Heritage and Army Museum, and we had a quick look around that. But I did say in that video that I was going to do another video where we'll sit down with the chairman and have a chat about the place and tell us the history and the story of it. Well, this is that video. Now, during the recording of this video, we had a big massive storm come through. Now you'll see us looking at the roof and listening to the noises and all that sort of thing, worried about whether the roof was going to stay on. But the good news is it did stay on, and we got a great interview out of it. So if you are interested in army museums or heritage museums or anything like that, or just want to find out what the goss is on this place, this is the place to be. So let's get into it. Okay folks, tonight we are at the Nungarin Army and Heritage Machinery Museum, and we're speaking with Gary, who is the chairman of the board of this place, and he's going to tell us a little bit about it. How you going, Gary?
Yeah, good, thanks, John. Yourself?
Not bad.
Yep.
So can you first tell us what your place is here?
Yeah, it's the Nungarin Heritage Machinery and Army Museum. It was set up, or we got a committee together in the early 90s and officially opened in 94. This is the last remaining building basically of the army camp being in Nungarin. It was built in 1942 because they thought that the Japanese were going to come down and invade us, and they wanted a supply depot somewhere inland in case we were ever attacked. They'd be able to resupply the troops with. And so Nungarin was chosen because it was approximately 300 k's inland, and at the time carrier-based aircraft never had big fuel tanks, so couldn't get in here and back again, and it could be supplied by rail and road at that time from over east and all the ports in Western Australia. So that's why it was chosen, and it took them about 18 months to build it at the cost of about £10 million. And when the army left, the Shire bought this particular building to use for their Shire depot, and they paid £1,000 for it at the time in 1962.
And so when did this place actually close down? As the army
camp, yeah, it was an official army camp or a working army camp till 1960, and then there was just a skeleton crew left here to get ready for the last sale. They had sales from about 1947. Every 4 or 5 years they'd have a sale and sell off some stuff, but the last sale was early in 1962.
One thing that comes to mind, like you were saying, that they built this here because they were concerned that Japanese were coming down and carrier-based planes couldn't get this far in.
Yeah. Was
there any consideration to the fact that the Japanese had a habit of not wanting to go back to the carrier anyway? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The kamikazes, yeah.
Was there any thought?
Well, I think, but the first ones would have wanted to come out here as reconnaissance planes and get back and tell them what was happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the army moved out. You came in several years later.
Yeah.
How did you find the stuff you've got here?
Yeah, the bloke that was mainly responsible for setting it up, a guy called Bill Hewitt, who is no longer with us, unfortunately. He had farmed around a fair bit of Western Australia, so he knew where he actually had a General Grant tank himself for clearing. He sort of had farmed from Muckenbuden, Doodlakine, Wildcatcham, Minavale, just out of Wiley, and had taken up a couple of new land blocks at Newdigate and Ravensthorpe at different times. So he, in all those travels, he knew where there was a lot of stuff, and he's the main person of why all this stuff is here.
Right, okay.
At the moment we have got some programs or projects. Before Bill died in 2020, he had done up a motor for a General Grant tank, which we have got down in the workshop, and his two sons, Roger and Neville, have guaranteed Bill that they'll get it going again. So it's all been sandblasted, the motor's been put back in it, and they're working on the interior, getting all that back together at the moment. The only hassle is Roger lives in Shark Bay, and Neville has shifted from Broome down to Mandurah, but they do come up for a week or two, pardon me, 2 or 3 times a year, and work on it and take a lot of stuff home with them and fix it up and bring it back.
Will that come into here when it's going?
Yes,
running,
yes, yeah.
So I imagine you must get your equipment or the stuff that arrives here in various different conditions.
Yep.
So you do all that work here?
We try to, but we, as in everything in the country, we're getting less and less volunteers, because they keep falling off the perch, basically. And we only own about 50% of the stuff in here. We do contracts with people, and they can leave them here for the life of the museum or for their life or whatever, or on a time period. There is a couple of things. The Ferret Scout car over there belongs to the Fernio family in Northam, and it is on 5-year revolving things. That's been here for about 15 or 20 years now, and one day they may come and pick it up, but they do keep it insured and licensed, so that it's road drivable. It's got a club license, so they can. Yeah. You can take it to club affairs and stuff like that. Yeah.
So when it comes to your equipment, what sort of army related? What sort of machinery do you have in the museum?
We're trying to just collect the army equipment for the period that the army camp was here. So from 42 to 62, basically, in those 20 years. So we're not trying to get any of the real modern stuff or that, but we do also have some First World War stuff, a bit of a 10th Light Horse display and stuff like that have been given to us by local families.
I guess you've got tanks.
Yep.
And you've got a scout car or something? You've got scout cars.
A Ferret Scout car.
What other kind of?
We've got a Bren gun carrier, a Staghound, a Dingo Scout car, various trucks, 6x6s. We've got a couple of Studebakers, a Chev and a Ford, and we've got about 3 Willys Jeeps and things like that.
You know what they are.
Yeah.
The old Willys.
Yeah.
All right, so then on the machinery side of things, what sort of stuff do you have here in the machinery? Like, for instance, this thing behind you, obviously something that was steam
That's
powered.
A steam engine, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that come from Grass Valley, from the O'Driscoll family.
Yeah.
And they used it on a chaff cutter out in the paddock.
Okay.
But all of that, how you see how big it is for about 4 horsepower, and now you get a little Honda or Briggs and Stratton that's that big with 6 horsepower or whatever. But I said that to some guy one day, and he said to me, yeah, but they were real horses in them days. They're only Shetland ponies now.
Yeah. And what other machinery you got?
We've got a fair bit of... we've just built a new shed outside, and we're in the process of taking the majority of the tractors out there and putting... we've got another collection of small motors that will come in here, and a heap of lawn mowers and things like that,
Yeah.
So, one of the things we're sort of looking at in the future is to have some a succession plan, if you want to call it that, and to try to, not just rely on grants and things like that all the time, is that we're trying to raise some money at the moment to buy the paddock out the back where the old, where all the stores depot were, and when we've got a couple more tanks running, to sort of, have a tank farm, if you will, and charge people a lot of money, hopefully, to come up and spend a couple of hours learning to drive one, and they can go out in the paddock and drive it and that sort of stuff.
Oh, that'll be all right.
And the other thing we want to try to do is build a caretaker's resident, so that we could have somebody living on the place. We've got a bit of land outside our fence, but inside our block, if that makes sense. And maybe a veteran might be, looking for somewhere to live, and not that I want to exploit anybody, but if they were on the pension or something like that, we would be able to give them accommodation and their power and water and the utilities paid for, and maybe supplement their income a little bit, and that they could, spend 3 or 4 days a week here, sort of thing.
So, talk about funding. Where do you get your money from to be able to maintain this?
The Shire still own the building, and they give us a grant of $10,000 a year to do our own maintenance on the building. In the last couple of years, the whole of the outside of the building's been painted, and we did that for not quite $5,000 worth of paint and brushes, and it was all done with a paintbrush and scraped down first. One bloke virtually did the whole lot, and some of the quotes that they got were sort of 50 to 60 grand to do it. We borrowed a scissor lift from a guy that's pretty good to us from down the road, and also the new shed that we've just had built out the back. That's if our roof's going to stay on here.
Got insurance?
Yeah. The new shed was the whole thing, and connected up to here with the doors down the end there, was just on $200,000. The Lotteries West put in $120,000. The Shire put in $60,000, and we put in $20,000 ourselves. So things like that, if you've got sort of big projects, Lottery West have been fairly good to us. When the Shire first moved out, they gave us a grant of about $52,000, and with that we built the kitchen just over there. Where the entrance is now used to be Bill's workshop, and because some of his machines were 3-phase, so we used the 50 grand to do that, shift the power, and build some cabinets in the army room over in the corner.
How do you see in the future? What's your plans for the future?
Well, hopefully if we can get a caretaker on board and get some younger volunteers, because we're all in our 70s with our bleached hair. Hopefully, that it'll all keep going.
So, what's your oldest piece of machinery you've got here?
There's an old rabbit bait layer there, horse-drawn one, that probably dates back to 1920s, I'd say, something like that.
And what do you call it?
It's a thing for laying baits for rabbits, to kill rabbits when they were, rabbits just about took over the place at one stage. And maybe the other horse-drawn, I think that dates to about the late 20s, the little super spreader thing there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when you look at things like that, virtually they've just got bigger and bigger, and instead of being ground drive, they're hydraulic and all that now, but the principle's still basically the same.
Yeah, I said in a recent video that like when I was in school, like they don't teach history in schools. Well, at least when I went to school, they didn't.
No.
And if they did, I might have been asleep during that because I wasn't great at school anyway. You know. But it wasn't until I became a tour coach driver where I needed to start looking at history, and know what to talk to people about, and started travelling and doing these videos myself. You know, and you know, I used to always think like back in the 50s and 40s and that, like how much of a struggle it was, and without technology. And then one day, I don't know where we were on a settler's farm or something somewhere, and I was looking around, and one day the penny finally dropped that you know, for them that was technology to have a 6 horsepower giant machine. That was their technology. You know? So and 100 years time, people are going to be looking at what we've got now, saying, geez, look how old that stuff was, you know. So it's really history. I mean, it's an amazing thing. You know? I just wish I probably paid more attention at school if they taught it, which I really don't think they probably do.
No, well, I don't. I agree with what you say. We get a lot of people come here and say, you know, I didn't know anything about this, and you know, a lot of people weren't aware of how prepared Australia was to fight on their own country, you know, and you know, you say things like, oh, do you know anything about the Brisbane line? And people haven't got a clue today, but they drew an imaginary line from north of Brisbane straight across to a bit north of Caravan, and when the Japanese were a real threat, they were sort of going to surrender that part of Australia and fight like buggery for the bottom.
It's a controversial line, isn't it? Because some people say it never existed, and some people say it did. So, I mean, only those people around back then are going to be able to give the right answer, I guess. But
I think that's now because they look at it and think, well, all the wealth is basically north of that line with coal in Queensland and iron ore and stuff over here. But
we can see the difference between West Coast and East Coast, so I can pretty much see the south of West Australia going, we can afford to lose this, no problem there. We don't, nothing up there we want, but anyway, that's getting into politics. We should stay away from politics. Well, look, thanks for...
Just one of the other iconic things that we have got here and use now and again is we've got a World War II searchlight. That's 60 inches in diameter.
Working?
Yes, yep. Oh, wow. And we do have a vintage rally each year as a fundraiser for our own coffers, and we take the light outside and fire it up, and we get about 30 or 40 other vintage vehicles from around the area, not all military, most of them are, you know, old cars and stuff with... There's a bloke in Muck and Boodin who's got a collection of 2 model Fords. He brings them over each year, and and then we take the light out at night. We usually have a band and a bar in here to raise a bit of money and try and soften them up and get into their wallet. And fire the light up for half an hour or so, and goes off well. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Anything else you want to add?
Not really, no.
Well, thanks very much for sitting down and having a chat with us. And we'll just go now and we'll have a look around and see at some of the displays. Yep.
No troubles. Yeah, this is a Bren gun carrier that they used during the Second World War. It was, we picked it up from a guy Woodfield at Cunnanoppin. It's been restored by some of our volunteers in the early days. And it's powered by a Ford V8 flathead motor that they used in a heck of a lot of this sort of stuff in the Second World War. This one, just as like a Bren gun carrier, there was just a driver and a guy, but they could fit half a dozen guys in the back, and some of them actually had a anti-aircraft gun mounted in them and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, this is a Ferret Scout car that these were made in England. They've got a Rolls-Royce motor in them, and as you can see on the outside they have a bit of other equipment. I think there's a spare radio aerial in this one, and a pick, and there'll be a shovel and stuff on the side and a spare tyre, and there would be a couple of blokes in there. They did have different configurations of them. There is one that doesn't have a gun up the top. It was just the big boss would be standing up in there directing the troops.
So this machine looks very similar to that. Does it do a similar role?
Yes, it does. This is a staghound. It's a bit of a unique sort of thing. It's got two motors in the back, and that drive into a common gearbox, and they are GMC motors, and there would have been 4 blokes in that, so it's just, well, a ferret on steroids basically. Yeah, this is the General Grant tank that we are in the process of doing up, or the Hewitt boys are. And as you can see, it's been sandblasted. We have got the tracks, the turret, and the final drive is outside. And yeah, before Bill passed away, as I said before, he did the motor up, and he also, this is the basket that fits in under the turret inside. And Bill also got all this going. We have hooked it's electric over hydraulic, so it's got its own little pump and all that in there. And Bill had a battery hooked to it and making it all work. And this is what the secondary gun, which is up in the turret. There was 3 blokes in this thing, believe it or not. And yeah, one of them would have been turning the gun around and up and down, and one guy loading and one guy firing. And the main gun in a General Grant is on the side up here, just poking out the front, which that one was 32mm, and the main gun was 75mm. And yeah, there was 7 blokes in this tank. So they were, yeah, American. They've got a 9-cylinder radial motor in them, all petrol of course. And they were very thirsty. So when they were based here, they had a fuel dump every 50 mile along every major road that would have been guarded by soldiers night and day. So that would have been a job for the soldiers doing that. And there was also roughly 400 women in the camp in Nungarin, AWOS ladies they were called, which stood for Australian Women's Army Service, and they were mostly drivers, so they would have been taking blokes out to guard the fuel dumps, because they didn't trust the farmers around here, I don't think. And also there was a heap of trucks that the ladies drove that would have been going to Perth and Northam each day, picking up supplies and moving personnel around and all that.
So how big a fuel tank do these have in them?
There's got 4 fuel tanks, and they're all about 50 to 80 gallons, I think, at the time. But they... Each, yeah.
And they only did 50 miles.
Well, they used to drink a fair bit. They would be using probably 15 to 20 gallons an hour.
Wow.
And I think they got a top speed of almost 30 mile an hour.
There are a heap more exhibits to look at here. We've only just scratched the surface. Like everywhere, it survives on donations and people coming out here to have a look around. They're open just about every day of the year, and they also have a number of events during the year to help raise money. Something else they need help with is volunteers, to help keep the place going. Gary was telling me you don't need to have any background in tanks or machinery or anything. Anybody can come out here for a day or a week and learn something new in an area that interests you.
No, you're right.
Alright folks, that brings us to an end to the Nungarin Military and Heritage Machinery Museum out here at Nungarin. It's an easy, probably 3-hour drive out of Perth, so a really nice day trip. Cost you $10 to get into the place. So come out here and support the people out here doing an excellent job of maintaining and recovering these vehicles from being effectively scrap in a paddock somewhere. I've also been told by somebody to mention that on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th Sunday of the month they do an amazing breakfast out here, so keep that one in mind as well. So that's it for this, so till next time, happy travels.